Happy Friday afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another MSP Cyber Roundtable. We're going to be talking about CompTIA with CJ today and the Trustmark, and we've got some folks that are going to be joining us that are going through the CompTIA Trustmark right now. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get those perspectives, hear from perspectives, and hear from CJ and Matt and everybody today. So how are you gentlemen doing? How was the week?
Good. I mean, it's Friday, so everything's good now.
I just threw everyone else in the green room, but should we bring them in one at a time for quick intros?
Yes. I think we could do that.
Okay. Josh is up here on top here.
Hey, Josh.
Hello. How's it going?
So Josh is doxed. He happens to be in the Trustmark process. It's public now. Everyone in the world knows. Tell us about you and Centrix.
Yeah, so I am the information security lead here at Centrix IT. We're an MSP based out of San Diego, but we do have clients that have nationwide reach. So pretty much, if you exist, we can probably support you. So we're a security first, very security focused MSP, and that's what I do is handle all of the security side and information security side for us.
That's awesome, man. And where are you located at?
I'm in the middle, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so nowhere near San Diego. It's a lot different weather here.
Tell me about South Dakota, because I'm about to say something that's going to make you roll your eyes, but I'm totally prepared for it. So I'm in love with Montana, which isn't South Dakota, but it's over there, and it's one of those square or rectangle states. Tell me about the rectangle states. I haven't got to go through them enough.
So it's a completely different world if you're on the it's a completely different world if you're on the west side or the east side of the rectangle states. If you're on the east side, everything's flat, a lot of corn, not as cool. But then the west side, that's where your visions of Montana, like elevation, the Black Hills, good for hiking and any of your wilderness stuff. So if you're visiting, you probably want to go to the west side, even though I'm on the east side. So it depends if you want to hang out with somebody cool or to go hang out in nature.
Hey, man, there are cool people in flat areas, and there are cool people there are shitty people in the mountains too.
Maybe Josh doesn't like corn.
Must be. Well, have you traveled very much, or did you grow up in the South Dakota area?
I actually grew up in North Dakota, and then about a little over 3 years ago, I moved down to South Dakota. So,
which is
definitely like the Sioux Falls area. Sioux Falls for sure. South Dakota, little bigger, but for the size of the city, it's like over 200,000 people, but it doesn't really feel like a bigger city. Definitely more to do and more to see. So, really enjoying the time here.
Great. How has Trustmark been for you?
I mean, you guys asked how your week was. My whole week's working on Trustmark. I mean, you guys are cracking the whip. Like it's easy for you guys sitting there, but us poor MSPs, no. No, it's been really great. I was actually very excited when I first heard about it. Obviously, I've known CompTIA. They're one of the industry standards for certifications, and then I saw they were doing a certification for MSPs, and that's great because there is no like MSP certification. There's no regulatory requirements that really we have to follow. You can do whatever you want. No one's going to tell you anything otherwise. So it's good that there is now becoming an industry standard recognized, hey, like you are you have some recognition, you follow, what these things of your trust mark. So it's been a really nice journey. We were a CIS shop where we followed CIS adherence. So the transition has been fairly straightforward. But I do like that you guys implement things that are more realistic to day-to-day operations of MSPs, specifically taking out a lot of the coding things, but then adding other things from NIST or just standalone things that, again, make more sense for MSPs to do than just following the strict controls from CIS.
I appreciate that. What's your favorite Super Bowl appetizer?
Oh,
Ooh. It's hard to beat nachos and Funyuns. I got some chicken wings ready to go in the freezer, so we're definitely going to chicken wings and Funyuns.
There you go. All right, Matt, you want to bring in the next?
we got another contestant here. Yeah. Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Hey,
How are you?
Peachy, how are you guys doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. We're glad to have you. Tell me about some of the things behind you. We've got a sword, and we've got some things that look like they may be either tribal or artistic in some way. Tell me about your setup.
Yeah, I mean, it basically you're right. It's a sword. I also have, because you can't have too many swords, so this one's actually a stage.
Sure.
This is for stage fighting. Which I did some of that for a bit.
Does it go floppy?
Get rid of employee issues very quickly.
It looks
One
like
way or
that
the
could
other.
hurt.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've done a little bit of sword place. I forgot how you said stage fighting.
Stage fighting. When you see a play, and there's a sword fight or the like, I've studied that a wee bit. I used to I'm a Second City graduate, and I've done a ton of improv. And
okay.
The don't quit your day job mantra is extremely accurate.
Where in the world are you?
Well, last I checked, I'm in Northeast Ohio.
Oh, okay. I'm in Northwest Ohio. I don't want to get too excited about how close we are.
Did I say Northeast Ohio? I'm sorry, Idaho.
Oh, Idaho.
Idaho. Yes.
That's way further.
That's where I'm at.
You're closer to Montana. I might send the Montana question your way again.
and I see that there's a question also about my bullwhip.
Oh, is that what that is?
So there's actually 2 whips up here, oddly enough.
Oh.
And each of them have very bizarre stories that talk more about the people I work with than me. So, yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to ask about those stories. I think I'm going to go right to how's your experience with Trustmark, Ben?
So let me get my whip and I'll demonstrate. So it's real interesting because when Josh talks about his experience and all that, he is coming at it from such a predefined position. His experience, both professionally as well as what he's done for the organization. Whereas I'm coming at it from the traditional, I am the CEO of an MSP. And yes, we've paid very close attention to security. And historically, we've had people on staff, but we've never been able to really create that, okay, how do we make that transition outside of just trying things and adding tools and resources? The thing that I like about Trustmark is, it isn't easy. Because what I hate is hey, you can become an MSSP tomorrow by just here's some cut and paste stuff you do. But it is relatively well defined and relatively well, I don't say managed is the wrong word, but the Sherpas are good.
You say Sherpas?
Yeah.
I like that.
I usually say opinionated, Bob, and we're opinionated on what makes for a good MSP, right? We have a whole governance board that's responsible for that. So
but see, here's the thing: you have to have that because, to a certain degree, our industry, and Josh hit on it, there is no such thing as what is an MSP, a formal legal definition of what it is. So, to get into the nuance of what specific MSPs should be doing specifically, and blah blah blah, if we're not careful, we're never going to get a good answer. So let's start, and this gets back to some of your guys with the self-assessment process and all of that. You guys have very specific opinions on where to go with that and what to do with it, but they're good, effective starting places. So kudos for that.
So CJ, should we do like we jump straight into experience about Trustmark, but should we do like a little?
Well, I want to know
101?
Bob's favorite
Oh,
appetizer
yeah.
for the Super Bowl. I'm still trying to make decisions.
Well, everyone's so focused on Trustmark.
So to be very, very clear, I'll eat pretty much any. I mean, I'm not particular.
He like
Okay.
by the handful or the
It's whatever my wife made or cooked or brought or indicated.
What's she good at, Bob?
Putting up with me.
There you go. That's a challenge. All right, fair enough. All right, Matt. He was not helpful. I have no new ideas for Super Bowl appetizers.
he knows how to win relationship 101. That's what it is.
Are we back to the bullwhip?
You have to give that to your wife.
I'm gonna hit the button, guys, and then CJ is gonna do his 20-minute lecture. Ha. We could do the 2-minute version.
Okay. So we can compress it into 18 minutes because there's only 18 domain areas, right?
Well, let me set it up.
Where do you want to start? Yeah, I was gonna say, where do you want to start?
I'll tee it up for you. Matt dropped you off the clip. So we've done a couple of different frameworks as we've gone through this round table experience with everybody. We went through CIS controls first in depth in each one of them. Then we went through, and we still have either one or two left to do, NIST CSF 2.0. Talked about the differences between 1.0 and 2.0. And we're going to be moving on the 23rd or the one following into looking at a high level at each framework that exists. Obviously, here at Fort Mesa and on the roundtable, we love CompTIA and their Trustmark and are super supportive of it. And if you're an MSP or if you're in the space, you can kind of consider the Trustmark to be a framework. They've gone ahead and they've put together a list of controls that correlate to an outcome that you should consider for a specific group in a specific industry. They're making a really direct, this is what you guys should be doing, which is what the other ones are doing. So I think this is a great first step into that territory where we're discussing at a high level the different frameworks. And this will be the first one. So we'll run through it. I think, CJ, if you want to just talk about what CompTIA wants to see and a little bit about what the intention is behind it. And then we can kind of kick around what's in there and what's not in there. And I'm sure we'll have had a great discussion by the end of those two things.
So I think the number one thing that the Trustmark is an actual framework, at least not today. And the reason why I say that is it's made up of it's a Frankenstein of frameworks. Like there's a little bit of everything in the Trustmark. In fact, it's funny that we landed on 18 domain areas like CIS. That wasn't intentional, but we ended up there because of the way things kind of went together. In our opinion, it kind of naturally progressed into, hey, look, we have 18 domains. But I think what's unique about the Trustmark is that, to your point, it's catering to solution providers, what solution providers need to do. And, what is the definition of a solution provider? I believe Wayne would say that a solution provider is someone that provides IT services in part or in whole to another entity. An MSSP would be similar, provides security service in part or in full to another entity. And I think with that, maybe a loosely defined stance on what is a solution provider, if you look at the safeguards that make up the Trustmark, you can see how one might apply those safeguards to either your own practice or potentially to how you provide IT services to others. So we also get asked that question, like, well, when is there a version going to be available for our vendors? When will there be a version for our clients? So I'd say let's not get ahead of ourselves. That might happen. That's definitely out there. But I think what's really important that what we see today, and Matt can help with this, is we ask this question, do a gap assessment, gap analysis. And really what we're asking you to do is to walk through the Trustmark safeguards and identify what am I doing today, and where are my where are my gaps, right? And I haven't had one MSP yet tell me like, hey, man, that gap analysis, it didn't tell me anything. Like it was just a complete waste of time. We're doing all of those things, right? Like, so this has really been an eye opener for myself and the rest of the working group and Fort Mesa team to say, wow, we're learning a lot about our industry that we didn't know before. And one of the challenges that everybody that is participating has to face is that the Trustmark isn't the end all be all. It's the beginning of your journey. We're not here to replace other frameworks. We're not here to tell you that the Trustmark's better than another framework that might be out there. We don't know what your journey is or what it looks like, but we do know that you have to start somewhere. And it's been brought up, I think Bob said this, like, we're here to help you go through this program. We're not here to just hand off a program to you and say, hey, let us know when you're done so you can be assessed. At the end of the day, as much as I'd like everybody to get assessed and achieve the Trustmark, the real goal and the real win is anybody that's willing to start on the journey and make changes in their organization, no matter how close they get to the assessment, as long as they continue to moving forward.
I want to throw a question out there, and I'd like for really anybody to feel comfortable answering it. But and I have a couple more related to the specific dots on the screen here. But for anybody watching, or anybody that's a part of an MSP, or anybody that's considering the Trustmark or related to CompTIA, why have the Trustmark, and why do it? What's the value for an MSP? Because everybody knows the value for why go through CMMC or why go through NIST. And for the record, I think it's extremely valuable. But let's paint the picture for the audience of what going through this program does for you as an MSP, and what it does for your brand, and maybe talk a little bit about what you guys think is going to happen in the industry with time.
I'd love to cover part of that.
Please.
There's a lot of security standards out there and goals, put out by governments, standards organizations already, or proprietary, assessors have their standards. But, the goal with any type of security certification is to demonstrate to someone else, or demonstrate to stakeholders, both internal and external, right, that the organization has met a security goal, right, that they've achieved a security goal. Evidence it, right, that it's actually happening. There's a bunch of security standards that do that, and what's unique about this one is, yes, it's focused on the service provider industry, and that's unique, right, for service providers. But there's another thing that's unique about this, and I'm not actually aware of another cybersecurity program that this is true, which is that CompTIA, they're a member organization, right? They're here, like, they're the largest IT association, right? Member-based association in the world. And they're here to push forward the whole industry. And when you join CompTIA, you become a member. And when you raise your hand and say, I want to work on the Trustmark, unlike every other assessment standard out there, CompTIA is like, they're there to cheerlead you, right? They have an interest in pushing the industry forward, whereas yes, assessors like to get security dollars, right? But I'm literally not aware of another security standard anywhere in the world where the people who've developed the standard are actively investing to push forward the community stakeholders in improving their overall maturity and achieving the standard. So usually it's an exclusionary control, right, to keep people out of the club. And so it's sort of unique. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's great. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about what the value is for the MSP from the perspective of going out into the industry after achieving it? Because obviously there's a value from the MSP and the CompTIA part. Having support from CompTIA is always going to be valuable to MSPs and the MSP industry. Talk a little bit about, once you've completed it and you're able to talk about that, where does that go? And what, how does that impact them? And I would love, Matt, if that could stay,
sure,
these could stay up, because I've got a couple other questions related to them.
So So there's the one thing that everybody always says is I can show evidence that my solution provider, that my MSP is doing what is necessary to protect my employees and my clients, and it's third party verified. So it's not a I did it, just believe me, which you're seeing a lot of that out there in the industry as well, right? So there's a lot of self-attestation, and not that those things are bad. I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, self-attestation is definitely valuable. I mean, the gap analysis that's inside the Trustmark is in fact a self-attestation. Obviously, that's not the assessment, but you're identifying what am I doing, what am I not doing. And I think when you get to that third party independent verification of the things that you're doing within your organization, that's where the real value comes in for a solution provider, especially when you go client facing. They ask, why should I put my trust in you, in Centrix IT, or, fill in the blank solution provider? Like, why should I give you my business? And, outside of, we're the best, or we're the, there's lots of reasons that you might market your business, right? But like, to be able to say, and check our verification. So that's one reason I think people want to be able to say we stand out from the crowd. There's another one that I think is kind of to the point earlier. We're not a regulated industry, but if you look at like the DoD and any of the agencies, there's a lot of requirements for things like your employees having, say, CompTIA certifications, or some form of proof that you've met at an individual level some level of security maturity. And I think what's kind of interesting is like when you start looking at that through the lens of organizational maturity, well, now that shrinks really fast. There's not nearly as many things out there that you can pursue, like CMMC or CIS or some like ISO. Like it's just not as many. And then the other thing that's really valuable, I think, about the Trustmark that helps, especially for that maybe getting into changing your cybersecurity posture and moving that forward motion, is the costs. Like having an assessment done is not a cheap endeavor, and that's one of the things that CompTIA has made part of out of the gate. Like, we don't want you to pursue this program through the Trustmark and have this be like a cost prohibitive journey. Like, we're not suggesting go out and do a $20,000-$30,000 pen test. We're not recommending you to go out and I think Joshua mentioned this, like there are safeguards that were removed from the Trustmark, not because they don't have value, but because they are significant deal breakers for the majority of solution providers. And as you mature, you may find that you need those things, but the reality is you got to start somewhere. And I think if I look at the way if you were being assessed, the thing that I would want to emphasize to anybody that wants to go through the program is our job is to objectively assess where you're at from a maturity standpoint, not subjectively tell you how bad or good you are at meeting it. If you're meeting it, you're meeting it. Does that mean we shouldn't do security best practices? No, that's not what I'm saying. But when you first start on this journey, going beyond can be extremely overwhelming. And the reality is the goal here is that you understand what's being asked of you, and that the outcome with how you've implemented meets that criteria. And as you mature through the program, obviously the crossing the line and doing exceeds what's being asked of you will come as a natural byproduct of maturing.
Thank you for that. Bob and Josh, we have MSPs here who obviously see it as valuable. So, I'm asking the big dogs over here why they see it as valuable. You guys tell me. You're going through it. What's the value from your side?
You want to go?
Yeah, I can go. So as part of my position, actually one of my KPIs was increase your CIS security. Well, we got to about just above 80% adherence with CIS, and then it's like, well, what do we do from here? And then perfect timing, the Trustmark came along, and I was like, that's our next goal right there. And what I like about it too, and I don't think CJ talked about it, is let's say we go through and we get Trustmark certified. That's not like the end. That's not like, hey, that's the end goal, because in order to maintain that certification, it gives us, okay, so you got the certification, you're good this year, but in order to retain it through the next year, we have to see some sort of growth. So whether you're doing, like you want to call it good, better, best. So what you're doing is good, but let's get it to better the next year. So now instead of, hey, what CIS control can we sort of meet? It's let's get this Trustmark, and then you kind of use that as our guiding light towards, what we're doing today and how we can do it better.
Bob, what about
Well
you?
said.
I'll look at it from a business standpoint, because all this other security stuff I really don't care about.
I was looking for this.
No, I mean for the standpoint, because this is we're all going
No,
down
it's good. I'm
down
glad.
this trip.
Yeah.
So first of all, the enemy of every MSP is commoditization. Okay.
Elaborate. Tell everybody who's not quite sharp enough like me, who didn't get it. Tell them what you mean.
So what I mean by that is that, it's a race to the bottom for so many of us. We just want to make sure the lights are blinking appropriately. We just want to make sure that the computers turn on. We just want them to, and every service that's out there is offering automation or ways to do that, so on and so forth, which makes it a race to the bottom in terms of how do you make money as an MSP? How do you get your clients to pay additional bills? How do you do that? Yada, yada, yada. So we have to look for ways. And then the other thing is, how do we differentiate ourselves? How do we differentiate ourselves from everybody else who is beating down the doors of our existing clients or potential clients to say that, no, we're different? And if your answer is, we care about customers, or we like puppies or something along those lines.
I like puppies.
It depends on how they're cooked. But just get back to the Super Bowl question. But the thing is that you have to be able to have some answers to those questions. And so every one of us as MSPs, our biggest competition is who we were yesterday. And what are the three biggest things that are happening in our industry over the past 10 years? Big data, security, and AI. And if you are not advancing or developing skills or offerings or value to your clients in those three things, and security has rightfully gotten the biggest press on that, then you are going to become more and more of a commodity. And all three of those services require very different skills than traditional IT services up till then.
Bob, I love those examples. And it's true. Those are the drivers in the industry right now. And what's different about them versus infrastructure is none of those things are ever done, right?
Yeah.
Those are muscles. You create capacity to exercise those muscles,
Yeah.
and you create a programmatic ability, right? The programmatic ability to operate a security program, right? The programmatic ability to manage large data sets and draw insights, right? The programmatic ability to utilize AI in a useful way, right? None of those are switches that can be flipped.
Right. And the training that so many of us got, and especially old farts like me, had nothing to do with the skill sets here. So when we look to start developing in these areas, and of course, cybersecurity, again, is one of the main ones, you have to look for somebody who's going to coach you on it. And if the coach that's what they do for a living, that's what they sell, or they have one goal in mind, you're going to go NIST, you're going to go CIS, you're going to go this, you're going to go that, then that's great. But you just put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So
I appreciate that perspective. We've been moving through our time here quickly. I've done a bad job of keeping us in line, but it's been a great conversation. I want to ask about how you guys chose to put it together. We would not do a very good job of talking about the set of controls if we didn't say, well, what kind of stuff's in there and why did you choose those things? So can we talk a little bit about that?
So I have to say that it's part of an amazing group of MSPs and vendors that have worked together now for almost 2 years. So the precursor, obviously, the launch, we spent about a year. And so what drove the content? Well, I was biased to CIS. That's how some of our conversations started, and so are some of the other people in part of the working group. But one of the things that we ran into really fast was CIS is very much focuses on technical safeguards, which is great for CIS, right? We are not CIS for MSPs. We love the technical safeguards. Like I can solve MFA, I can solve for DHCP or audit logging, fill in the blank. But where we really lacked, and you can see it on the slide, were areas of things like governance and leadership, physical and environmental. Those are a couple of the key areas that we just didn't have coverage for. So that started us on a journey of what are the types of safeguards that we need. And rather than just blindly, pick a framework and then point the finger at whatever domain category, we started looking at insurance questionnaires, the ones that are being put on your desk by your clients or by your insurance, and going, do we have the right safeguards so that when an MSP does the Trustmark, that they would be able to confidently satisfy the questions that they're being asked in those questionnaires. And that slowed us down really fast. So if you think about a simple one, or I shouldn't say simple, think about a question like, do you have MFA? In the Trustmark right now, I think there are 3, if not 4 specific questions surrounding MFA for very different types of access within your environment or to external systems. Well, if you see an insurance questionnaire, most of them might just have the one question, do you have MFA? So we're seeing questions come up on these questionnaires, and we're having to go through the entire set of safeguards that we already had and go, how many of these have to be satisfied before that question gets satisfied in that questionnaire? And then we started running into things like, I don't have an answer to that question. Where can I go find it and plug it in so that we have that as well? And so it's not just frameworks that we pulled from. We even pulled from regulatory requirements that aren't even in the form of a framework. And so there's some interesting quote safeguards in there that have come from many different sources. And just to give you an idea, we pulled from 800-171, 853, pulled from HIPAA, NYDFS. I'm sure there's more. I just totally drew a blank.
There's some ISO requirements in there. Yep.
There's some ISO requirements in there. And in fact, we even have a couple in there that just say CCT next to it, which is code for CompTIA Cybersecurity Trustmark. So like our group said, let's throw this one in there. This is important. And it didn't come from a framework or a recognized control set. We just felt it was appropriate for a solution provider to provide some evidence to support that question. And so that's how it kind of all came together. Like it really is, it's meant to be a starting point so we don't get carried away with pen testing. We're not looking for, privileged access, the level of profiles that you're testing. Are you doing authenticated and unauthenticated? Like we just have some simple questions like, do a pen test, have it on a specific cadence or a schedule. We took out things like passive scanning, because passive scanning, that requires purchasing, in most cases, a tool that's going to cost money and require a lot of resources potentially to be stood up in order to be successful with that. So like that's kind of how it all came about. And so this says technical domains, but like governance and leadership, that would be not technical domains. But the reality is, we want everybody to be successful. So the amount of governance and leadership safeguards that we put in there are so that you are going to be successful with the technical safeguards when you get to those.
I love that.
It sounds like, CJ, the short version I'm hearing is not only are you comprehensive across, the good things that all cybersecurity standardization efforts have sort of brought into the world. You guys looked at all of those to round things out, but you're really focused on what's actually right for a service provider, right? A solution provider.
And security too is an interesting statement, because I can tell you that there is a safeguard in that says acceptable use policy. One could make the argument that that does have elements for your cybersecurity program and maturity, but at the same time, how long have we been creating employee handbooks? I think forever, that contain things like what is acceptable use of work resources, right? Like, using your personal laptop for accessing work data. Now, depending on what your policy is, that might be part of a BYOD policy or any number of things that you are entitled to do. But we often don't have those conversations as a precursor to cybersecurity. And so we have those questions in there to help you identify, like, what are we doing now as an organization that is preparing ourselves to mature in that cybersecurity space? Kind of hard to do if you don't have an employee handbook or any of those things in place at all.
Absolutely hard to do. Well, I've got more questions about the CompTIA Trustmark, but I know we're going to talk more about them maybe we roll on over into the next section here, Matt, and
We get to see the cat.
yeah, it was a little less obvious when I was smaller, but I don't think she's going anywhere. So this is what we're doing.
It was it's very small on the screen, but I saw that Bob almost killed you with his favorite Super Bowl food.
Oh yeah, it caught me off guard. Bob had me sideways there for a moment.
So,
Well, go ahead.
Well, so this Trustmark, can we just zoom backwards here? Standardization began a little over a year ago, Chris, and then when was launch? Was that last summer?
So we came out of the beta program in April 2023, April-May timeframe. We started really onboarding, and really onboarding meant like, hey, no one wants to onboard because it's between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So our agendas as solution providers is like, hey, kids are out of school. So we did get, I would say, probably 20 to 30 activated relatively quick in that time frame. And then it was probably mid-September that we started to see real, like, pretty much just overwhelming attacking of wanting to onboard, pursue the Trustmark. And you can remember, Matt, some of the technical challenges we had just with the sheer volume of onboards that were happening. So today, I would say it's in a very short period of time, we'll be right around 200 active participants. And I say active, like I kid you not, I'd say 2/3 of those that have onboarded are active. And when I say active, that means that they're moving in a direction called forward, and it's not stalled or going backwards. And because we've had this roughly 8-month time frame, forward progress doesn't necessarily happen every day. I just had a conversation with an MSP today that really stalled as far as progress goes, kind of stopped making forward progress in the October-November timeframe, and just reached out to me to say, hey, we had to make some changes in our organization because of other variables that are not specific to the Trustmark. And so we've had to make changes to those that are participating and have been our champion. But the important thing to remember is that even though they felt like they weren't making progress, they still were, because it's important to them. And so their challenge was now, how do I put a new champion in place and continue this momentum forward? And so one of the things I say to any MSP that reaches out says, hey, I'd like to be re-onboarded, or we're 60 days in and I'm struggling. I don't want to say cool, because that's not cool, right? I don't want anybody struggling, but get on a call, reach out to us. We do weekly calls where 15 to 20 MSPs will show up and we talk through some of these challenges. Both Josh and Bob have been regularly on those calls and sharing their experience. And it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes the hardest part of answering a safeguard is your answer. So when you say, I'm struggling with this question, and someone else goes, oh, well, this is what we did, and you suddenly realize how overthinking it you were, and that their perspective, or maybe your perspective, changes the person that thinks this was no problem, no big deal, I got it done and I'm moving on. And you bring up a question that they didn't think of, and now they're going back and going, hey, I need to revisit that safeguard. I definitely didn't do it the way Josh said or the way Bob said. Or I've asked questions before that after we've gotten off the call, Matt and I are like scratching our heads going, wait, security through obscurity. Yes, that's not necessarily the end goal, but that is a part of the process, because that might be your compensating control today, because you can't write a check for $20,000 or $5,000 or whatever it might be to solve it, truly solve it. So you've put something in place which is better than having nothing at all.
Chris, if I can jump in for a second, I want to double down on something. This will come as a shock to anyone who's familiar with me, but I am a freaking idiot on a lot of topics, and that includes, to a certain degree, security. So if you're thinking that you have to be so far along this process before you can get value out of the program, and especially before you can get value out of the call, I am absolutely living proof that that's not the case. All right. So I am not at all to Josh's level as far as how far he's made it and all that kind of fun stuff. I am basically beginning this journey and this process, and I'm finding those calls invaluable. So
I just wrote it down. I have the illustration that shows levels of complexity. So I put not doing so well, Bob on one end, and really mature and great is Josh on the other end. So we now have some measuring sticks for going forward.
That's funny. I was gonna give you a follow up on some notes I had, and same ones. I'm glad you picked them up right
Yeah.
away.
Basically, like 6 Bobs equals 1 Josh.
Well, so
There you
it's
go.
funny.
There you go.
It's funny you say that, Bob, because from so I'm not like spying on all you guys, like looking at how you are going in the program. Like we have assessors for that,
I am.
right? Like it's Chris is doing it. I'm just we're having conversations. I'm supporting when you guys have questions. I'm waiting for your raising your hand for support. And what I see is that you're working through the requirements and you're raising your hand for support, and you're showing a willingness to invest energy on an ongoing basis to make improvements, and not with the expectation that you're going to be done like next Monday, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
With the expectation that this is a process and you're going to move through it. And as Josh said, yeah, even if when you get certified, there's still next year. And there's a reason for that. It's because security is a process. It's not a product, right? When you exercise that muscle and you create your security program, you are more secure because you've started that process and you're operating it. And I would say, Josh may have started before you, Bob, but I would not make the presume that like you're both investing and you've both created this programmatic inertia. And so many people in our industry checked a few boxes and said, "Oh, I'm done with security. I'm secure," and they're not doing it, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure that it's fair to put Bob at the beginning of that spectrum, but
It is.
No,
And I have no problem whatsoever.
All joking aside, I think everybody starts in a different spot. We say this a lot, the only silly or dumb questions are the ones that don't get asked. We started to put together, and there's a blog that will be coming out soon that talks about 7 things I wished I would have known about the Trustmark. You've talked through some of them here, but there was one of the statements that came out that I thought was really good. Learning that I'm not doing it the way it is supposed to be done quite right. And I was like, that's an interesting statement. So in follow-up, it was, I am actually doing this wrong. The exercise of reading the safeguard, better understanding what the prescriptive nature of that safeguard was an aha moment that the way they had implemented something actually wasn't solving the problem. We've had a lot of realizing that there were things that we thought we were doing that we just aren't doing when they did the gap analysis, which is a huge eye-opener, right? Like nobody wants to go through the gap analysis and have more thumbs down than they do thumbs up, right? Like that just, nobody wants that. And then to say like you have unknowns, like I have no idea what this safeguard means. And I'll give you an example. Like, what are sanctions and why do I need them? They sound bad. And it's like, well, maybe it is somewhat bad because it means that some policy or some security incident has occurred that you are remediating, but it's not necessarily that you're like punishing somebody. You're just putting something in place so that they can't do that again without really screwing up. Like as in like they have gone around to do it again, which would be, that's different than, hey, they don't understand. How many times have we talked to somebody, they're like, what do you mean I can't have my password on my screen? I can't remember my password. Well, until you explain to them why that's a bad idea, there are people that still don't understand that someone could actually be looking over their shoulder to get their password.
Or any other number of, goofy
like Josh
words.
just posted his social security number in the private chat. There's like 9 of us looking at
Or
the private
somebody.
chat. Yeah. I mean, maybe it wasn't his social. I haven't tried it yet.
He hasn't run it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask more about gap analysis because it's a really important process for doing the Trustmark, but I'm of the mind that it's a really important process for life in general across all aspects of your life. So I would love for one of the 2 experts above me to talk a little bit about gap analysis in relationship to Trustmark. I'd love to hear Josh and Bob talk about their experience going through the gap analysis. And then I'm going to say a bunch of things I think about gap analysis.
I think I should do the demo here. Chris. The one we do
I
every
think you
week.
should too. I think you should too.
So I'm gonna
Does
hit the button.
does this app we're using, does it capture people taking screenshots? Do we get so we can get a number count of how many screenshots get taken?
It just keeps going up. So
I'm in the QA system. We can't see Bob's dirty laundry here.
I can see the whip still.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So by the way, we just added this new guidance here this week, so you guys will see
Awesome.
that next week. But when people move through the Trustmark for the first time, I always sit here on this page, right, and we talk about it, right. So there's 177 safeguards here, and the place to start that I always recommend people start, right, it's here in gap analysis, and all I recommend is that people spend 30 to 60 seconds per control, thumbs up, thumbs down, and they move down this list and separate the things that they know that they are doing at least a little bit, even if you're not sure it's good enough, from the things that they know that they are not doing, and leaving behind the things they have no idea, right? Separating that into 3 piles. And it really, like, this is the basics of what you need to kick off any programmatic cybersecurity effort, right? Is to understand where you're at so that you know exactly what you need to do next. So, in this case, it's, go through the 177 controls. And you know what? Like CJ says, he hates to see more things with a thumbs down than with a thumbs up, but I don't feel that way. When I get to the end of a gap analysis with someone, I'm like, great, we know exactly what next week's going to look like, right?
Well,
you're going to do this and you're going to do this.
You're thinking about it. Hold on. You're thinking about it in terms of handing out tasks, Matt, not in terms of I just gave myself tasks. So I agree. If you're making money with it, for sure. Let's hop out of here and let's hear. So we know what gap analysis is now. Let's hear about what Bob and Josh's experience was going through that.
So when I did mine, I pretty much listened to Matt and went through it, and I was like, oh man, 180. Okay, cool. So on one of my monitors, I had my CIS spreadsheet up, and I'm like, cool, like I know we meet this. And then I was like, wait a second, these aren't one-to-one CIS. This is a little different, right? So I didn't really look too much into it. I just was like, yep, we do that. Yep, we do that. Yep, we do that. I have no idea what this is. I'll come back to it. No, we don't do that. So I went through and basically just did a real quick, like I didn't even spend much time looking into it. It was just off the top of my head or gut, like, yes, no idea, we'll look into it. So after the initial pass, I went through and then I was like, okay, so these are the ones I have no idea. Let's open it up and actually look. Okay, yeah, we kind of do that, so we'll give it a thumbs up or no, we don't. So then went through it a second time, and then the third time was like, okay, so now everything has a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Then I started going into the implementation of, where's the proof that we're doing that and documenting that.
What about you, Bob? What was your experience going through the?
So here's the thing: is the gap analysis does not change reality.
No,
it doesn't. The only thing it does is it creates a very, very rough map as to what reality may or may not look like. And I'm not an expert enough to have the accurate answers to these questions, so I don't even try. But I don't want to fall into that whole analysis paralysis trap where I'm going to research every single freaking question to just know. So to basically use your guys' advice, which is absolutely appropriate, to just go through and say, yeah, I think we're good, knowing that as we go through the process, I will become smarter, assuming that's possible. And from that process, we'll then be able to revisit these and go, oh, when I said yes, I should have said no. When I said no, I should have said yes. Or yeah, but we need to do more, so on and so forth. It's a starting point. That's all it freaking is. You're not publicizing it. You're not posting it to the world. You're not doing anything except for getting started.
It's a really good statement. So for those that are participating on the panel, so Josh is in that technical role and Bob in the business owner role. So before I came to CompTIA, I used to do a lot of we didn't call them the gap analysis, but we called them your security maturity assessment. So asking questions, they largely fell across the NIST domains. But if I asked the questions to a business owner for any organization that had 5 or more employees, it was almost without fail the exact same thing. I'd ask the business owner and I'd get a lot of great, like 3.9, 4s, pushing 5s on the score of like maturity of like, this is a baked in process. Then I'd sit down with the engineer and ask the same questions and be like a 1.7 and a 1.9. Maybe if I was lucky, I got into the 2s. And then it was interesting to have the conversation with the 2 back in the room together. Like we were suddenly, trying to get one to turn on the other before we get the full confession for what really happened for the puppies for the Super Bowl party. But what was interesting in what was said, we all like fried chicken. That's what we got out of it.
Yeah, good job. I was thinking about how to make the joke.
So what we uncovered though was that neither one of them were wrong. That was
Right.
the biggest takeaway. But what was happening though in the internal piece was that governance and leadership were not on the same page as the employees responsible for the technical execution of those safeguards. Hey, we bought this tool, 3 years ago. It's like, yeah, but we don't have the resources to implement it. So we have it, we're paying for it, and it's sitting on the shelf over there, and it's not even blinking because it's still in plastic wrap, right? Like, and I would say of the 100 or so that I did, 80% of them were the truth was almost identical every single time. And if I gave you the questionnaire, like let you answer it on your own, I always got great scores. No matter what. If I asked you the question, I got truth. I would even get questions like, I don't understand the question. Can you please repeat it? And we would get to the point of like, yeah, your answer actually is no, because you're trying to justify a yes to feel better. Rightly so, because the reality is, like you said, Bob, if I don't know the reality, if I don't know what reality I'm trying to live inside of, then the reality is whatever I want to make it. And right now I want to make it better than what I think it is in real life, maybe. And so to point that at the Trustmark, the win with thumbs up, thumbs down is very, very different from the assessments that I did before, where I was asking some pretty deep questions that added up to giving me the score I was looking for. This is super straightforward. There's no points happening on the back end. There's no score that's going to come out of this that says mature, not mature kind of thing. It's just telling you, this is what you said. And as you go back and put in your actual answers in and provide evidence, some of these are going to change, or some of these are going to suddenly be like, let's go deploy this right now. I marked this as green and we're not doing it. We can have this solved in 45 minutes. I just have to go to that server, flip the switch, and turn that logging on.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I know when I go through these processes, people want to, and whether you get like an accurate reading off of someone in an interview sometimes has to do with how you frame the question, right?
Absolutely.
But what they want to say is, I've done that before, or I know how to do that. I know where that button is. Yes. But the reality is each one of those yeses might be a half an hour or an hour project, and times 177, that's a massive effort. You need to know where you are right now.
Yeah. And I love that, Matt. Forgive me for cutting you off, but this is the thing that I wanted to end up at. And I love that Trustmark starts this way. And I think all elements of your business, whether you're an MSP watching, or whether you're you and me, or whether you're, Bob and Josh and CJ in your own, focus of the larger business you're a part of, I think analyzing where you're at is a really good thing to do. And how many of us in our lives don't take the time to get on the scale, or to take the time to analyze our gaps, or to look at the things that we would like to be doing, or could be doing, or have the capabilities to be doing, but aren't doing. And I think it's an amazing place to start. It's really indicative of what CompTIA's intention is in industry, to help people be their best, whether it be through certifications into individuals or through helping MSPs be their best. And I think it's something that people should just do for themselves in all aspects of their lives that they want to improve. Take the time to, what do I want to do or need to do? Am I doing it? How can I do it? And then go be the superstars you all know you can and want to be. So I love it. We've got 5 or 6 minutes left. Do we want to do a round of takeaways, or Matt, CJ, do you have something that you guys would like to wrap with?
I want to go back to an earlier point about like building this programmatic capacity. I have seen some really interesting changes here where partners that we talked to before Trustmark, right? And then partners after Trustmark. It's just super interesting what we're seeing behavior change here that if there had been like a magical button I could have pressed to move the industry forward before now, I would have pressed it. But like it's amazing to see like people raise their hand, they join Trustmark, and then they start building these security functions that like if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, no, that's not within the capability of a small MSP. And now I don't believe that at all anymore. So
love that. CJ, you want to swing one at us, and then we'll let these two gentlemen have at it? Oh, you may be muted now.
I know Andrea had some technical difficulties. I just showed that anybody can have technical difficulties.
We'll have her on the next one. So Andrea,
Yeah.
don't you worry. We're sad that we didn't get to put you on screen.
So Andrea's been one that's been very actively showing up to our Tuesday calls and asking a lot of questions. And she's a testament to it doesn't require lots of people to be in your MSP to be successful with this program. And that's one of the sort of myths about the Trustmark is that there's this belief system that I only have 1 or 2 or 3 people in my company. So I'm going to tell you, yes, there's a good chance that this is a heavier lift for you because you don't have anybody else to assign the lift to. But that being said, if you commit the time to doing it, you can get through the Trustmark and get the initial prep done for an assessment. It is not, in fact, if you look at CIS, it doesn't say based on the size of your company. It says based on your capability. So the Trustmark takes no prisoners, but it is not about you being ill-equipped from a capability standpoint. The only way you're going to end up in not being equipped to do this is if you choose to say, I'm not going to prioritize my time to get this done.
And we have one-man shops, right, that have joined and are making progress and are probably going to get certified in not too
Absolutely.
far in the future. Yeah.
Bob, let's start with you this time.
So here's the other thing that I find kind of annoying about a lot of the security discussions that happen with the MSP is that it's an all or nothing. You have to achieve this Trustmark, that you have to get CMMC, you have to get this, you have to get that. The bottom line is that every move you make towards this, we're going to implement these additional controls. We're going to implement these processes, these procedures, these whatever, best practices, however you want it, improves the overall security and quality of your organization and the services you deliver to your clients. So if you basically just look at it from the standpoint of saying, whoa, I can't do this I can't achieve this over the next 2 years or whatever. Maybe not, and it may be something that it's going to take a very, very long time. But during that process, you're going to be able to say, as you deal with these things item by item, we're better, we're closer, we are doing these things that we weren't doing before. And that constant improvement, I call them infinite gains. This is never ending. Security is not going away. Security requirements are not going away. Changes because of security requirement changes is not going away. Welcome to the world.
Welcome to the world. All right, Josh.
Yeah, I'll just continue to add on it. Especially with cybersecurity, it's something that I tell all of our clients as well. It's not a problem that can be solved by just buying some hardware and software and calling it good. It requires constant practice. It's a lot easier to implement if you have that top-down strategy. When your leadership is bought into it and you're practicing cybersecurity maturity every day, then it just becomes second nature. It's not something you can really teach or something you can master. It's everyone is practicing it and we're all just trying to get a little better and better and stay ahead of the game. The unfortunate side of cybersecurity is the bad guys have to be right once, and we have to be right every single time, or we lose. So we're all in this together and trying to better ourselves. And this is a great tool to get us there.
You just made me feel like a superhero the way you said that. We got to be right every time, man. That's right. It's well said. Well, does anybody have anything else they want to throw in there before I take us away into the weekend?
Well, I would love to invite Bob and Josh to come back in at some date in the future and talk about, you guys are Josh's late process of his first year cycle. Josh, you're mid process. I would love to check in later in the year and just see like what's changed, right, from now till then. So
how it felt.
Well, after March, I'm pretty sure Josh will be in assessment stage.
Yep.
All right. Hot dog.
Been called out.
And
I got to
Bob
do
will
it
know.
now. Yeah. It's all right. We'll help Bob get there. We'll get him there.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
All right, guys. Well, what a great conversation. CompTIA, Fort Mason, and Trustmark are awesome. Bob, Josh, and Andrea are also awesome. Everybody who watched today everybody's awesome, man. So are Fridays. Next week, we're going to have Jeff Ferris from Cloud Radio on for a conversation about cooking up security. And God knows I love the kitchen. So we'll enjoy that conversation. If you're new to the MSP Cyber Roundtable, make sure to check out our educational content on our YouTube platform. And if you haven't liked us on LinkedIn, please do that. Happy Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.